We're 1:30. We're right to start.
perfect. Let's go ahead and maybe give another minute for everyone to join in to the session. If you're at Nuestra Gente, Rise of a New Tech Hub in Brazil, you're in the right place. So before we bring in our guest of honor here, I'll give a little tips and tricks of how we're going to be able to do today. So today is going to be more of a conversation. We want to go through various different subjects. So I encourage you to actively participate in the chat whenever you can. Emote, converse with each other, talk about the topics that we're talking about, and feel free to ask questions. We're going to introduce Fernando in just a second. I just want to wait for maybe another minute for more people to trickle in. But it is a interactive session today, so we want you to be encouraged, engaged, bring your questions, write your questions down in the chat, and we'll definitely get to as many of the questions as we possibly can in this short session. So without further ado, we'll start and we'll get it started. So bienvenidos, and welcome to Nuestra Gente, Rise of New Tech Hub, Brazil. We're joined by Fernando Carello, and I'm going to read a little excerpt of Fernando's bio. Welcome, Fernando, and welcome to the Techeria family. For those that haven't seen me speak before, my name is Richard Lopez. I'm going to be moderating the session, and I'm the founder of the San Diego chapter. And Fernando's here. He has over 30 years of international experience developing marketing strategies, supporting IT companies to establish operations in the US. Fernando is a partner investor in Stage Ventures and a syndicate fund for post-seed investments, managing partner of the international soft landing incubator, Google Start, under the lean startup concept, and is co-founder of Base Miami, which has gone through a couple of changes. He'll tell you in a bit, and is an accelerator supporting technology companies to develop business globally using Miami as a platform. Welcome, Fernando, and feel free to add on to that.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with the Tech Career community. I love to be a Latino here in the US. As you notice by my accent, I was born in Brazil many months ago, and I moved to the United States in 1999 and to Miami in 2004. So, but I lived also in Colombia and Ecuador and in Angola in Africa. So there's a lot of living abroad. And when I moved here, I was to move to work in a technology company from Brazil, and we did a project very interesting to sell in dollars and to pay in local currency in Brazil. So that was a good business. The year was 2001. No one was doing that. We have no idea what you're doing, and I thought that was a good idea to bring technology from Brazil to the United States in 2004. I came to Miami to start my own consulting business. It was now it became the incubator Kubostar. And when we founded Base Miami I met an Argentinian guy called Charles now. He was doing some development from bringing companies from Argentina, from Chile to Miami as well. When we got together in this, I think we're going to die together or we're going to survive together, see what we're going to do. So we create the concept of Base Miami to be the accelerator for tech companies. Then COVID hit. When COVID hit, we thought, oh, we are done. You cannot do any business anymore. And it was just the opposite. It was that the remotification, right? Everything becomes remote, allowed companies from everywhere to work everywhere, anywhere. And we grew a lot. And when we met a group of investors here from Miami that had the idea to make Miami a hub for technology innovation for the Americas, to connect the Americas. This is the vision of a single man called Moish Mana, and his company is called Mana Common, and he created a branch called Mana Tech, and Mana Tech was to bring and put together investors and technology companies and startups and innovation out from Latin America here in Miami. And his project was to attract companies here, and it was something that we were doing at Base Miami. So last year we merged the operations, and Base Miami became the program for the technology hub of Manatech here in Miami. So we have ventures, we have spaces, events, and programs. Everything's happening here, connecting the Americas. So and the idea is to make Miami the hub of all the hubs. Every tech hub anywhere in the United States or in any country in Latin America can connect through the Manatech hub. That's the whole idea.
Nice, nice. And For those that are here, many of already know what a tech hub is, but what makes a tech hub different in Brazil?
Well, the definition of technology hub is very fluidic. That depends on who you ask for. But some of the characteristics that you need to have, let's call the ecosystem, which also is a new word for community and things that, and market together, right? So you need to have talent, so people you need to have academia, you need to have universities, you need to have R&D centers, you have facilities, and you need to have one thing that's important: capital, investors, the funding for to creating new ideas, and we need to have one thing that people forget about is the clients, the consumers of technology that are being generated for a tech hub. So I cannot. It's very difficult to create a tech hub without the who is going to buy a technology. You're going to be creating technology, but technology is going to be in the trash next month. So you need to be for use. Well, a tech hub exists to put these things together, to create these ecosystems of inventors, innovators, providers, consumers, and capital makes things going around and make it work. So a tech hub in a way is not a place but a mindset of a way of creating an environment for people to connect and develop new business.
And obviously, the environment of Brazil has its own unique culture and representation. Uh, how was it building a tech hub in Brazil? And maybe can you give us a little bit of how how that experience was, or coming from there to Miami, some of those nuances, I guess you could say, that color, like a tech hub in Brazil and a tech hub in Miami, because a lot of Brazilians in Miami. There's also a lot of other cultures too, right?
Yeah, yeah. You see, Brazil doesn't look like, but it's a very big country, and with a large population. So there is not a single tech hub in Brazil, and even if within geographic regions, there are several ones and dedicated to different things. So if you go to Sao Paulo, which is a metropolis comparable to New York with 20 million people, there are several tech hubs and incubators and things happening together. In Brazil, usually when you mention tech hub, there is a connection to a university or to one thing that's called ICT, ICT in the Information and Communications and Technology. That's in like non-profit institutes created to foster research and development innovation. And it's interesting to say why there is a name for that. Because there in Brazil, there is a law that every telecom company, or even if it's a carrier or it's a manufacturer of telecom equipment, must invest 1% of the revenues in R&D in Brazil. And to develop this technology, they invest in technology centers, the ICT companies, so the ICT institutes. So Brazil has several ICT institutes to develop their own technology that's very unique of Brazil, that you don't see that in any other country of Latin America. It's in the US, there are some companies like that on the defense area. The DoD foster this kind. There's not a regulation, but there's some DoD developing companies and investments in R&D companies like that. But in Brazil, it's mandatory for private companies to use this money to invest in Brazil. So there are several technological hubs that were created based on this regulation. I have a great example in a city of north of Brazil called Recife. There's an institute called Cesar, and Cesar has been developing. It was 20 years ago, there was the research center for Motorola in Brazil. But there are other companies like that use this kind of centers for research and development.
I'm looking here at some of the things. Florianopolis is known as Brazil's Silicon Valley, right? And you're in Florida, but tell us about Florianopolis and what makes that the Silicon Valley of Brazil.
Florianopolis is a unique case. It's also as a tech hub. So right south of Brazil, they have a very strong university there, the University of Santa Catarina in Florianopolis, and they someone I don't remember the name. They created a tech park inside the university, and this tech park it was joined by other government agencies and local and also some private companies to foster innovation there. And the Florianópolis, the government agency is called SEBRAE, is the equivalent of the American SBA's, Small Business Agency. They invest a lot of money in fostering the innovation, the talent. Remember the talent that you need, and you have the companies as the clients, and then you have to have some sauce on it. That was it was created. It's called Acate. It's that's the main player in the market, the main incubator that foster the ecosystems. So Florianopolis was created already on the after the dot-com era and in the cloud era and the software as a service. So Florianopolis is probably the most of the companies that are created, founded in the Florianopolis hub are for software as a service, and they have a regional reach and they have a Brazil-wide reach and they sell all around. So it's very interesting what they accomplished there. It's a little similar what we did in Colombia for Ruta N,
Mhm.
and that when the PPP, but in Florianopolis it's older. I know people from there that has already operations in Silicon Valley. There's a company called RD Station that is now it's a global. It has operations globally and Pipedrive. So there are lots of companies that were uh, founded in this region, and they are now have global reach based on and in interesting they also give back to the community. They also create funds to invest in the local companies that are there. They have the events, and probably one of the largest innovation event, technology event in Brazil happens in Florianopolis for SaaS companies.
Nice. I think one of the things that makes it also intricate is this concept of ICT institutes. I know we talked about that a little bit and what that means in Brazil and what it means for us here. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, interesting. Think about I have the talent and the money to create new technology, and I'm a global company. Let's put any company, Samsung, Apple, Motorola, Huawei, something like that, and they want to go to the Brazilian market, and they have it's mandatory for them to expend 1% of their money there.
Hmm.
Automatically Brazil becomes R&D center for the global corporations. So there are several technologies that are used by Samsung, by Huawei, by Cisco that were developed in Brazil because it was mandatory for them to expend the money there. So this means that we have uh, pretty good jobs, high-paying jobs for the engineers that are graduating in Brazil, and with long-term commitment to the market, to the global market. And this also fosters a global mindset in the development of technology from Brazil. So we have technology from Brazil embedded in several equipment that we don't realize that was done there. There are camera systems, AI solutions. There are things that are in the global market. And and even for me, it's a surprise when I look for it. Oh, what's done in Brazil? I had no idea, right? And it was in some of them were because the global companies expand their money there, and they brought them overseas to their as their global offerings, and also includes the let's say the transfer of talent throughout the world. So you have Brazilians that were created that in Manaus working for uh, Japanese companies, Korean companies that are in Brazil that's been transferred to Japan, to Korea, to the United States, to Europe, going around the world, spreading the let's say the Brazilian culture and technology mindset globally. And this is something that's happened. It's different. It's very few. Something that we saw 30 years ago with the Indians
Hmm.
when India went into the technology market. You can see that happening today with Brazilians.
And we were talking a little bit about this before the call started, just that fusion of different cultures within Brazil and how you see that. I mean, obviously in Miami, you have like sushi samba. It's a beautiful, like, delicious food that comes out of that too. But this pipeline, how have you seen that kind of permeate into specific companies you've worked with or brands where you're seeing that intermix of culture and tech, and not just with Japan, but maybe even with other countries?
Oh yeah, interesting enough, there are in south of Brazil there was a huge migration from Germans and Italians, and I know a lots of let's say third generation Brazilians that were the grandfather came from Germany, something like that, and they when they create their company, the expansion goes to Germany because they have the culture, they understand the market, and they have the relationship to have to close the gap between Brazil and Europe. So there are several companies that were created in Brazil, and the migrant mindset uh, brought it back. In the US, it happened with Ireland a lot. In Brazil, there was a link with it. I have a friend of mine that's is an Italian heritage, and he's living in Italy, and his company was created in Brazil, and he's now selling globally, living in Italy because of the relationship that he had in the past. So there's this is the kind of relationship that you can leverage. They're still using the developers in Brazil. The company is still hold in Brazil. The technology is done there. Most of the clients in Brazil, but his global mindset was inherited from the migration, from the culture, the mix of culture that you have there.
This concept of like working with Brazil, I'm sure that there's some kind of legal frameworks that happen when we're working with one country to another. I know that there's some that's other key things that we wanted to touch upon. How does that work for this legal framework? If you wanted to work with a startup from Brazil, if Brazil wanted to work somewhere else, how does that work legally?
Oh, let's separate two things. Work with a regular company in Brazil and work with startup in Brazil. Working on Brazil, it's a different animal, right? It's a different country, and there is specific because of the size and the size of the market and size of the geography and the population has specific laws and regulations that you need to abide, and this is a very different. It's very challenging for foreigners to go to Brazil. So everyone tells me you need to be a Brazilian, you need to work in Brazil. That's not true, but it helps, right? You need to understand how the country it has this fabric that in the relationship. But one thing that it changed a lot to work with Brazilian technology and Brazilian startups, it was there was I believe it's 2001, 2021, they created a framework, a regulatory framework for startups in Brazil and investors as well. Uh, Before this regulation, it was an investor could be deemed as a company partner and has the liabilities for that. After this regulation, for this is one of the for me one of the main important thing that happens that as an investor, I'm not liable for the wrongdoings of their startup company. It's something that in US, that's why you create your LLC in Delaware.
Right.
Now this regulatory thing in Brazil happened to and put specifically what is a define what's a startup company and the definition for startup company and also the liabilities for the investors. And one thing that it is different from other countries. I've seen there is it makes it easier for government to buy technology from startup companies. So there's a differentiation when the government is buying technology. If a startup company goes to a different rule, so
Mm.
it helps a lot because when government has buy technology buys anything, there's a lot of commitments that's you need
Big, big
lots of
contracts,
rules
right? Yeah.
big contracts
Yeah.
and commitments, and I don't know if it's a startup, they reduce it to make it for the company to be able to bid against large corporations
Mm.
on the same level. So this, for me, changed a lot and helped a lot fostering startups and innovation in Brazil. That's very interesting.
Yeah. What's interesting is that one of the word choices here you had put was a friendlier environment where startups can thrive, which I thought was very interesting too. and it may have something to do with the angel and seed investing and how that works in Brazil. You talk about maybe the tech hub and how that works.
Yeah, interesting. In 2003, I was part of a group that created an investment fund to invest in technology companies. And I can tell you that we had no idea what we were doing. We are we are pioneering something
We
that
appreciate your honesty.
we are pioneers. It was 20 years ago. We are pioneering something in
Refreshing
Brazil.
to hear
Yeah,
that.
and sometimes you really don't know what you're doing, but you still keep on doing that you
Yeah.
believe that works. Yeah, and today is much easier. But when we create this investment fund, well, we did good. We invest in a very limited amount of companies. One of them what good. That's okay. But what you've seen that there are very when capital abound. Uh, Although Brazil has a very high interest rate, people are looking for better investments. Let's say better
Mhm.
returns on investments. And technology companies start returning better in on the ROI in startup companies became better than even the high interest rates of Brazil. So
Hmm.
that's why there was funds were created to invest money that was, let's say, parked in the financial market to foster innovation. And one thing that's interesting is that because you have the talent, the market need, and when you have the capital with getting the returns, it creates the perfect storm for VC funds to arise. So today, the market of Brazil is very mature in investments. So there are several VC funds well known that invest including in global companies. There, I know a investment fund from Brazil that was an early investor in Google, and the return is on this investment like 2,000%. So it's ridiculous
Wow.
high. So it's something that, and they put a lot of money there because they were already uh, ready for this kind of investment and to understand the risks of a VC, right? It's something that it's very different from investments in regular financial market or in a regular company. Is that a VC must be very understand the risk that he can lose everything. It's just like going to a casino. A
Right.
VC fund is a casino player,
Yeah.
right?
You gotta
So
be
he
willing
has
to win everything and lose everything at the same time.
yeah,
Yeah.
and what we developed and how you balance out this that you create a portfolio with more risk and less risk to get the return of investment. So the VC funds of Brazil are very developed. There's and let's go from the stages of investment. Uh, Usually, a startup company is bootstrapped, so receive some kind of grant. Let's say angel money. Angel money in US is like 200 something thousand dollars at least. In Brazil, it's 200 something reais. So in based on the current exchange rate, is 5 times less than investors of that company here. So there is a good motivation to invest in the same technology in Brazil than you invest in the US. So this has been attracting foreign investors to Brazil as well.
What is your outlook for 2023? I mean, we're almost done with that, but maybe we can go even further to 2024 at this point. But what we're Q4 Brazilian venture capital. What's your outlook when it comes to that? We touched on VC funding, angel seed, but what do you think is the future there with Brazil and how
Uh, um,
we're seeing the growth there?
for funding, Brazil is the largest market in Latin America, right? It's really in comparison to, let's say, Brazil. It was 80%. Now it's maybe around 60% of all VC money that's been invested in startups in Latin America. So it's very high. But when you think it, how much money is invested is nothing in comparison to what's going on in the West. Maybe Brazil is larger than Florida in VC funding, and Florida is 10% of Silicon Valley.
Right.
So that's so we are talking about 8.5, something like that, that goes to investment funds in Brazil, which is very high in comparison to everything else in the region, right?
Hmm.
And the Brazilian market is a thriving market. It's also Brazil is 50% of all technology in South America, in and growing. There is a I used to say that there is a relationship between the GDP and technology. The higher the percentage of technology in the GDP of a country, the higher the more developed is the country in comparison to underdeveloping countries. So in the more if you think of any country, if you have this technology being important to the GDP, this is a developed country. So this happens to Europe, happens to Japan, happens to United States, Canada. Brazil is right in the middle of the pack. So technology is important to the GDP, right? It's not as important as it could be, but there are some countries in Latin America or Africa that technology is non-existent on the GDP of the country. So that's one of the ratios that should be evaluated when you're talking about the market and how you create the market. But you can see just as we mentioned, Florianopolis and the SaaS companies. It's expected that this market goes to $3.7 billion just for Brazil. So
Wow.
it's crazy, and these companies are being created every day, and technology is being developed every day, and the market's growing a lot. Most of this, and there's a and it why SaaS is so important today. Uh, the state of technology and the internet and cloud and everything that's processing, and the reach to the people. Every consumer, like you, Richard, you probably have uh,
Mhm.
at least 50 applications on your cell phone
Pretty,
that
pretty much. Yeah. I
and
have to delete one to put one in. It's a one in, one out system at this point.
every app that you have in your phone is a SaaS company.
Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, it's so much that's being funneled in and through Brazil that we don't even aware of, that are through other companies that we may not be aware of, and this is such a great eye opener for people that are looking at Brazil or working with Brazilians, right, and being more knowledgeable about what's going on in the country or what's coming out of that country. And I think it's such an interesting conversation to have with the people that are here today. I know we're almost at time. We have maybe 2 or 3 minutes left. But I just wanted to open that up. And if anybody has any piercing questions that they couldn't put in the chat or wanted to pipe up, feel free to use that space. But otherwise, we can take the last 2 minutes here to just thank you for coming here, telling us your story, your experience, and really kind of bring more of that knowledge to what is possible, not only within the region, but how that intersection between what Brazil is doing in the technology space, I think is fascinating. And hopefully everyone here got something out of that as well. I'm not sure if you have any parting thoughts before we go, Fernando, but I have one question here. We can probably get it in before the end from Hugo, which is, how is Brazil for heavy industry like aerospace and manufacturing?
Fantastic question. And it's interesting to know that aerospace is the largest export item of Brazil. Wow, I thought it was coffee. It's not. It's aircrafts. Embraer is the third largest manufacturer of airplanes in the world. It's Boeing, Airbus, and Embraer. And it's amazing enough, it's also one of the largest import items for Brazil is for space for the parts for aircrafts. So there is a very large manufacturing base in Brazil for everything. Uh, Embraer is a Brazilian brand, but international brands also have operations in Brazil for heavy industry and manufacturing. Brazil, in a way, is could be self-sufficient in this kind of equipment. What Brazil is not self-sufficient is in the silicon area, in the chips, and just like everyone else in the world, we have problems manufacturing chips. It's done in Taiwan, China, and Korea. So that's what the plans that we have. Although we have something like that in Brazil, we have some manufacturing for in computers in Brazil and this kind of stuff. But the chips, the processors are coming from abroad. So if there's one space that it's lacking in the Americas today is the microchips. It's not only in Brazil, but for heavy industry and for aerospace and for even cars. Brazil has a very small local car brands, but the manufacturing plants of the large companies, global companies, are present in the country. So yeah, there are good things that you have that. Thank you, Hugo, for your question.
Thank you, Hugo, and thank you, Fernando, for joining us. I know that our room will convert into another room shortly. It's actually going to become building trust and engagement. So stay tuned for more things that are happening with Techeria. And thank you so much for being a part of our room. Nuestra Gente, Rise of the New Tech Hub Brazil. Thank you, Fernando. Thank you for everyone that was here today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Camila. Thank you, Hugo. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye bye.